Hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us this afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon in New York. I hope it's the same in Paris and in LA, because today I'm in New York, Abdellah is in Paris, and Colm is in Los Angeles. So my name is Sandrine Buteau, and I am the director of Flaubertian Books. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to welcome the Moroccan novelist Abdellah Taïa and the internationally acclaimed author Colm Tóibín for a conversation on Taïa's latest novel, A Country for Dying, which is published by Seven Stories Press and which is translated by Emma Ramadan, a co-laureate of the 2017 Albertine Prize. We would like to thank Ruth Weiner at Seven Stories for precious help in organizing this event. Ever since his first book, Abdellah Taïa has established himself as a writer delivering necessary stories about France's shadowy colonial past and how it reverberates in the lives of today's North African and French immigrant youth. As the first openly gay Arab writer, Taïa is also constantly advocating for the rights of homosexuals in Morocco. Abdellah Taïa started his life under the sign of books, as he was born in the public library of Rabat in Morocco. Acclaimed as both a novelist and a filmmaker, he writes in French and has published 8 books that have been widely translated, including Le Jour du Roi, which was awarded the prestigious Prix de Flore in France in 2010. An adaptation of his novel L'Armée du Salut was his first feature film. It was released in 2014 and screened at major festivals around the world and aided by the New York Times as giving the Arab world its first on-screen gay protagonist. Taïa has lived in Paris since 1998. We are extremely grateful to Colm Tóibín for accepting our invitation to join this conversation. Colm is the author of many novels, collections of stories, essays, playwrights, and poems. His best-selling novel, Brooklyn, was adapted for the screen in 2015. Nora Webster's, published in 2014, won the Hawthorne Prize, and On Elizabeth Bishop, published in 2015, was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award for Criticism. The Magician, his 10th novel, is forthcoming this year with Viking. Colm is currently the Irene and Sidney Silverman Professor of Humanities at Columbia University and succeeded Martin Amis as Professor of Creative Writing at the University of Manchester. He was appointed Chancellor of the University of Liverpool in 2017. One very last thing for the public, there will be a very short question and answer session after the talk. So please type your questions into the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can. And now I'm ready to leave the floor to Abdellah and Colm. I will disappear from the screen, and I wish you a very great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Abdellah, I want to start by asking you a question that is perhaps technical in one way and political in another. And it comes from reading your book, and it comes also from something that John Berger said. Often John Berger, people quoting John Berger is always a mistake, but let me try this one. That he talks about the idea that we live in a time when it's not possible to write a single story, when no single narrative will hold under certain pressures. And I'm curious about the idea of writing a novel in which there are 4 different narrators or characters or protagonists. And that it isn't merely a monologue followed by a monologue, as much as each time someone speaks, the writer writing, the reader reading, and the character speaking all have some idea that there's a shadow speech that's coming from someone else whose speech will be put beside this. This is technical in one way. You know, it's just how long do you make each monologue? How much do the characters have to interrelate? But of course, it's also political in that for each voice, there is another voice. There is an accretion of voices. So anyway, that's a really long question. And I wonder if you could give me a really, really long answer.
Yes. Well, bonjour to all of you.
Bonjour to you too.
From Paris. And thank you very, very much, Colm, for being here with me. It's a big honor for me. I'm very happy personally to be talking with you. And I think we should do one day a conversation book, you and me. I think this idea to write for me is not to have some model already coming from literature or from other books already existing. Because when I was a little boy, the idea of just reading books, just the idea for literature is not for people like me, like the poor people. It was this idea that it's only for the bourgeois who could afford to learn French and then to imitate what the big French writers have written, and they will imitate that on the Moroccan reality. But me in the 70s and the 80s, I felt excluded from this idea of literature. The only thing I felt in, and I felt like this is my world, is all these voices around me, all these stories of my sisters, of these drunk people in my neighborhood, the criminals in my neighborhood, and this constant people speaking and crying and screaming and screaming. By the time I was 18 and 19 and I decided to do, to become a bourgeois like the Moroccan bourgeois, like learning French like them and being much more good at French than them, I realized that I was not that much interested in the good stories that are in books written by Zola or by Arthur Rimbaud or by Marcel Proust, because these stories were about France. They were not about my mother. They were not about this abandonment, this political abandonment I lived in as a Moroccan, as a poor Moroccan, political abandonment by Hassan II, the king at the time, by the Moroccan elite, who took the French, the colonial language, the French language, and kept the French language to them. And when they wanted to separate themselves from us, they would speak in French. So instinctively, I knew that I should just listen to these voices around me, because their stories, their lives were much, much, much transgressive. So as soon as I decided to write, the voices imposed themselves in me, but they imposed themselves on me not in a total way. It was something like, you know, for me, the stories never go until the end. There is no end, actually. There is no end, like in movies. There is always some interruption, like brutal interruption of something. And that's what allows another voice to enter, to say something and be interrupted, etc., etc. And all these interruptions of voices, that's what gives me, I think, the format, the techniques that I want to write with. Just to go with the voice and not necessarily until the end. And at a certain time, at a certain point, you just cut it. You have to be merciless, I think, as a writer. Then you just have to stop that narration and go to another voice. There is no end for me. There is no end. I don't know what you think of this, Colm.
Well, let me ask you another question. I'll tell you what I think in a minute, but I want to know what you think first. The idea of voice, the idea of, say, voice rather than structure. So the voice seems unstructured. It is someone speaking. Of course, it's never unstructured, because you're all the time, as you say, cutting, manipulating, deciding. You know, it's not a simple stream of speech. It is decided on. It is manipulated. But I wonder if you could talk to us about the difference between third person narration. She went, the author then decides, she went, she did, there's someone else watching, or the idea of attempting to write speech, write first person narrative.
Well, actually, I never wrote any text on the third person. Until now, everything I wrote, it's some not that well-behaved characters who just impose themselves, their stories on the papers, on literature, on me. And I just every time have to think how to, how much time and how much space I will give that voice in order to say something that has, of course, a relationship with the whole idea of the book. But I think this idea of the third relationship, the third person, I think it's coming, I have to admit, from my idea, for my relationship with Allah, with God, with le Dieu. I am always scared of Allah. And I was raised of this idea to be scared of Allah, and that's that guy in the sky manipulates and knows more than us. And I am not comfortable enough with the idea to be making some competition with him. So I just leave him alone in his third person up in the skies, and I deal with something that is much more concrete to me, which is a voice. Yet you don't see it because you don't see a voice, it's just something coming out, but yet it is all the time incarnated in some people and not necessarily in me. Yes, I am the writer. Yes, I started by talking about my homosexuality and trying to find my own voice, my own, me as a Moroccan, as gay, etc., etc. But quickly I found myself just boring compared to the other people around me, surrounding me. So I decided just to be a good thief, and I think I'm
a good listener.
No, a thief. I'm a listener and a thief, and I think sometimes people don't. I became very, because I was surrounded by 6 sisters when I was a little boy. They were all older than me, and my mother was talking non-stop. And my sisters, like 6 bodies of girls, and with dreams and desires and oppression, and yet transgressions and obsessions with men and movie stars, Egyptian movie stars. And all that was happening in one little room for all of us, and me in the middle of them. So I was, yes, a good listener, but at the same time, I was not that kind person just listening for the pleasure of listening. I was always, until now, actually, I still have this technique. I want to enter in the voice speaking to me and be that voice, not only to and I think I acquired this literary ability to enter other people's voices from the bodies of my sisters, because we were sleeping next to each other on the floor during many, many years. So I witnessed everything happening to them as persons, as bodies, as women, and as voices. And when I say a thief, so already when I was a little boy and a teenager, I was like, for instance, when some of my sisters would have a rendezvous with a man or something, I would manage to have as much information I needed just for me from them without them noticing that I am manipulating them already. I was a good manipulator. I was not a sweet or a gentle person at all. I had my own techniques in order to get the inside of them. And I think that's what I try to do now. And that's what I tried to do in this novel, A Country for Dying. I can't compete with Allah. So because I'm a Muslim and I grew up, I mean, I am a Muslim. I grew up as a Muslim. It is extremely important. I am not turning my back to Islam or to Muslim people, because that's a cultural structure. That's imagination, imaginaire, history. Yes, there are problems in Muslim societies. The power using Islam in order to suppress and oppress other people. But Islam, as I lived it, is a culture, is a way of living, of being. I cannot be today, because I speak French and I speak English and I am with Colm Tóibín speaking, to say, okay, Muslim people are just stupid and they know nothing about life, and they know nothing about transgressions, they know nothing about poetry and having sex after midnight or something like that, because they do now. They do have transgressions. They don't care about Simone de Beauvoir or Arthur Rimbaud, because simply they don't know them. But as human beings, as Muslims, there are things they respect, and there are a lot of things they don't respect. So I think that's what I try to, because it is a good thing to be a thief, as like Jean Genet, but it is as well a good thing. I think that, and this I believe very, very much in, it's that literature is also here to give space to other people, not only me, Abdellah Taïa, the writer.
In A Country for Dying, I think you play with ideas of what constitutes bad behavior. I mean, you mentioned your characters behaving badly and what constitutes goodness. And I think your character Zaira is an interesting example of a novelist beginning first, that there are many images of transgression, but at the very center is a sense of her desires, but also her goodness, her pure emotions. So that she's a complex, ambiguous character. She's caught between certain forces, but she herself cannot be easily categorized.
Yes, yes. She is an immigrant. She's a Moroccan prostitute in Paris. And although she realizes very well that Paris doesn't accept her, she is for Paris and for France. She is just an immigrant, an Arab immigrant, and she is exploited as other immigrants in France, and the France that exists will not recognize someone like her. So she decides to turn her life, the role of her life, to fulfill other people's purposes and desires, meaning the migrants in Paris, the Pakistani, the Sri Lanka people, the Sudanese people, all these new waves of immigrants who are just living in the streets of France, of Paris. No one caring for them. So she offers herself, her body, to them to have sex with. So of course there is some ambiguity here because she takes money from them as well. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But and plus the novel starts with her witnessing the death of her father, and she has this guilt that she was there witnessing his falling down and going to death because he commits suicide in the first pages of the novel, and she did nothing to save him. And I think by trying to save, as a prostitute, other migrants in Paris, she's trying somehow to repair that horrible thing, that terrible thing she did. She didn't save her father. She's in the first floor and she hears a chair falling down. It was in the middle of the night. Later, she understands that was the moment where her father commits the suicide, and she did nothing to save him. So that makes her extremely charged emotionally and wanting to have some space for herself and for other people.
Yeah, I think you very carefully in the opening pages establish her in that it isn't merely that she let her father down or that she didn't help him. It is you feel an immense wave of emotion and regret and feelings of love and feelings of almost wanting time to stop or time to go back. So you get a sort of yearning in her. So it's not simply a matter of her guilt. It's a matter of how her voice registers feeling. And her voice registers feeling, I think, with a considerable amount of care and a considerable amount of texture.
Yeah, here you are talking about techniques I put in a voice. Like when you start a voice, when it is speaking in the present time, it doesn't necessarily speak in the present time. There are other moments and other memories coming out as well while we are speaking in the present. But as a character, the opening of the novel, it's the death of the father, and narrated, of course, from the future, if I might say, but it is written as it is happening now. And that, for me, that says something so much for her, this idea that we see maybe the things and other people only when they are not anymore here. which is something that is deeply, that concerns me extremely now that I'm 47. And at the same time, why is it that we live next to people and we somehow, we don't see them. We don't see that much each other. She starts, yes, Colm?
No, I just want to stop you, and I want to ask you a very personal and slightly difficult question that I hope will not embarrass you too much, but I don't really mind. Abdellah, is it possible that you are actually an old-fashioned Flaubertian novelist, that you take your bearings from Flaubert, that, in other words, that idea for all of us as novelists of building a character, that you build a character on complexity and ambiguity, that so that it is not possible to use a single adjective about a character, and that every time you say something, the opposite is also true. And the more this is the case, the more the character emerges texture. So that, yes, I know you're Moroccan, I know you're Muslim, and I know your connection to France is tenuous and sort of gnarled in certain ways. But I wonder if there actually is in you, hidden inside you, a little Flaubert waiting to emerge.
Well, that's a big compliment coming from you. I am very Flaubertian, yes, if I might say. In the idea, meaning that I totally don't believe that people or characters in novels or art should be one level or one side. It means nothing. The ambiguity is the definition, is the main thing that I put here in my mon franc. That's always like, I will never write a novel or something just to say that this guy was, or this girl, or this woman, or this man was a victim, and only write the whole novel only from the perspective of being a victim. Yes, there are so many victims today in the world, but I think we should not listen to victims by victimization them more. We should go deep and deep in them, what they are really experiencing, what they experience and what they are experiencing now, and not trying by putting on them our media, what is going on today. But yes, I am Flaubertian if Colm Tóibín says so.
And I want to go further, Abdellah. I'm really sorry, but I want to throw in Zola and Stendhal to say that if there are ostensibly four characters in the book, I want to suggest that there's a fifth character, a shadow character but actually underscores a great amount of the narrative, which is the city of Paris itself, not exactly France, but Paris, and that it is a portrait of a society. So I think Zola would be very proud of you, in that you have taken on, as it were, the burden that he handed on to novelists, which is, yes, there is character, but no matter what you do, character lives in time and lives in circumstance. Yes. And that you need to make that time and that circumstance as textured as possible. So I just wonder if you could talk to us for a moment about your version of Paris in A Country for Dying.
Well, first of all, when I studied French literature in Morocco in the University of Mohammed V in Rabat, the first year I had a class called Roman Analyse. It was only to analyze novels. The whole class, the whole year, we had only one novel to analyze the first year. It was Émile Zola's L'Assommoir. I don't know what's the title of that in English. L'Assommoir. Anyway, I was mesmerized by that novel. It's so real. It so goes and so harsh and so political, but yet never shying away from saying the reality of this abundant people. So I think when it comes to writing, I will always follow that path, by Zola's path. Like, everything has to be, for me, coming from the reality. And if there is any theory, it should come from the reality we are witnessing and we are putting in a novel. So Paris, in A Country of Dying, is yes, a fabulous city, but a rich city, cultural heritage city, but that's for the elite people. And it's for the white elite people, of the people maybe living in Saint-Germain or the 7th arrondissement, etc. But here, the characters, Zahira, the prostitutes, the Zanuba, the Algerian transgender, and others, they know that Paris doesn't care for them. Paris doesn't see them as good as them. So they decide to take Paris by storm without any blessing from these owners of Paris. So Paris is their city. Yes, they are suffering in this city. Yes, they are not happy in this city. Yes, they are exploited economically in this city, but yet they have memories in the streets of the city. They have experiences. They spent years in this city, which means that Paris belongs to them, whether the French people says yes to that or not. So I give them the legitimacy to show their Paris and to invade somehow, to invade Paris, whether the white French people like it or not.
So there's a scene in the book, which I just wonder if you could take us through, which is Mujtaba has arrived in the city, and the city is famous. And so he's staying with Zaira, who is protecting him in this sort of wonderful way, where she has this astonishing way of looking after people. There's a sort of kindness in her, and the two, it's a very intense relationship. But he wants to see the Luxembourg Gardens. And you feel, well, this is a natural, this is what you would do. But surely she could say, well, I go there every day, or, well, but actually she's not been there before. There's a mention early on in the book that she has been a prostitute sometime years earlier in streets off the Champs-Élysées. But nonetheless, this Paris, Champs-Élysées, Gardin Luxembourg, 7th arrondissement, that this is not her world. But it's not just that it doesn't belong to her, it's alien territory. It's almost as though there's an invisible wall. And what he wants her to do is to walk through this invisible wall into a sort of another reality, which is not hers. So you're playing here with ideas of Paris, of who owns Paris, of what is Paris.
Yes. Well, actually, it's coming from a simple image. When you go to 6th arrondissement, the 7th arrondissement, the kind of people you see there are not the same you see in the suburbs, are not the same you see in Barbès, the neighborhood of Barbès, where the characters of this novel live, all of them, most of them in Barbès. So somehow they know that Jardin Luxembourg is not for them, so they should not just bother to go to this area. And it means that, unfortunately, that we are much more dominated by what the power wants us to do and where the power wants us to circulate. And then we know. But at the same time, I didn't want, what I just told you, it's a very political, sociological truth that is easy to know about. And this truth is in the novel. But me, I never want to put too much sociology on my characters. I don't want to put too much political heaviness on them. I don't want them to be theoretical. I just want them, like, for instance, it's like when you want to go, okay, I am in Barbès and I want to go to, I don't know, to Montparnasse. What are the subway lines I need to take in order to get to Montparnasse? So the way I write is as concrete as this. What is the way, what is the subway stations you are going to pass by in order to be here? So, I think just by expressing and putting these names, there are all the sociological truths that will come out. But more than that, I just want my characters, the people, the voices I found in this novel and other novels to be, I don't know, to have...
To be Flaubertian.
Yeah, to be Flaubertian and to be desperate and yet to have the energy of desperation.
Yeah, that that in other words, what you're talking about is, yes, these problems exist between Morocco and France. Yes, Paris is a place where there's a great deal of invisibility and the characters are left out of the narrative, of the national narrative in France. But that as a novelist, yes, you need to know that. You have it in the background, but in the foreground, you have this simple idea of character, of the ambiguity and complexity surrounding an individual voice, what the individual voice sounds like. So then you have Zanuba coming as a sort of second voice, or almost, if there's a soprano, then there's a contralto, or indeed there's a baritone. It depends on what day it is for her or him. But so I just wondered if you could talk about the making of that second character, as that it's not exactly shadow, it's not exactly opposite, because you don't work like that. You don't think in binaries, but it is nonetheless the voice coming after hers, the second voice.
Well, it's Aziz slash Zanuba. He is an Algerian prostitute,
yes,
like Zahira, who is Moroccan prostitute, and they are best friends, if I might say.
Yes.
And Zanuba is here for him when he is about to change to his sex. He's about to become a woman, the woman he dreamed all his life to become. And the first words he say in the novel is, I am going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to cut it off. The male sex I have, etc., etc. I have to admit that for me, his character is much more hurt than hers, because for him, he is going to the unknown. We might have ideas about what does it mean to be a transgender person, but actually the whole experience of doing that is still something that even the people who are doing the surgical assignation, etc., is still a very, very complex experience. And I wanted this character of coming from Aziz and becoming Zanuba not to be as cliche as we hear about it in the media. Like, as soon as he comes out from the hospital, he is happy as a woman, etc. It's much more complex as an experience, and I think because, and I think you can see yourself that too, Colm, because in your novel there is always this idea of the exile. There is this idea of in the between worlds, and we suddenly don't know where we are. Don't you think? You always talk about that in your books.
Yeah, I'll talk about me in a moment. I want to talk about you. One of the things that I think makes Europe very interesting for novelists now, I mean pre-pandemic Europe, is the Schengen Agreement, is the idea that you could move very easily from one country to another in Europe. And that anyone who came from outside found that generally if you ask people who came, say, from Africa or came from Asia, like, where did you go first? Where did you go then? It's constant movement, constant disappearing. People are suddenly in Paris and then they're in Stockholm.
Yes.
Why did you go to Stockholm? So, oh, I met someone who told me that if I went there was a bar. And so there's a strange spidery network of connections and people's telephone being the most important thing in their lives. And so that your character who, Mojtaba, that he comes into the novel in a very different way. But I feel that freedom that Europe has given the novelist allows you then to see him arriving, looking as though he's going to be here forever, but he's actually thinking all the time about the next move in a way that Zahira and Zanuba are not.
Thank you so much for noticing this, Colm, in my novel, because this is extremely important. Immigrants and migrants, they are obsessed with this idea that what is the next move, how to get there, and they are always speaking about themselves and other people, where he is, what he did, how did you make it, where did you find the money, did you call your mother to give her the money, how much money you sent her by Western Union. Like, this is our daily life, And it might seem for maybe the white European people that this doesn't exist, but for us, it is the main thing that we live in. And as a human person, I am extremely moved by this. Not my story, but just to see other people telling me what they do and what is going on. And plus, I find this extremely brave, extremely courageous. These people are not, they don't come from universities, they don't come from Harvard University or La Sorbonne, and actually they don't care about Harvard and La Sorbonne, but yet they want to come here and to find their own ways, whether the European powers are facilitating that for them or not. But yet they are here, and they are in the streets of Paris, because I am here in Belleville. Like, I am in the street, I see the Sudanese people, Eritrean people, Nigerian people, Senegalese people, and they are just young boys and girls, and they manage to come from Eritrea, walking, and some of them they tell you we walked like on their feet, and they went to Libya, and from there they stopped and they found someone to take them to Tunisia, and then they waited, and then from there they find a way to go to Turkey, and here he is in Paris or London. All this, I find them like this is the modern images of Greek Odysseys, of this is the new Ulysses. This is Ulysses. They are the true Ulysses, Ulysse, and we should not think of them just as poor immigrants and trying to survive. We should value them, the courage and the bravery they are putting there, just in order to come here, because they believe that in Europe there is something good for them. And yet Europe and the West is not welcoming them at all in a good way. But yet they want to come, and they are saying, we will find our places there, whether you like it or not. I find this extremely inspiring.
So do I, actually. And for a novelist, I think it's really interesting material. I promised myself that I wouldn't talk about Ireland, but I'm going to. Just very last question. I promise this is a question. It's not a big statement, but Ireland probably has something in common with Morocco that maybe we have in common with Cuba, that in the previous generation, and maybe the generation before that, there were large families. And in every large family, someone left, someone disappeared. There was one uncle, one aunt that no one talks about, or comes back after 20 years, or is it just a name? And it happens on islands, and it happens in poorer countries where someone just wants to go. And so your novel has a shadow figure, a haunting figure called Zineb, who is the aunt, who is the disappeared one. And your narrative will move back in time to let us know, I think in a very somber, serious way, what happened to her, how her life was lived, where she went, what she did. And but it moves the generation back. So it gives you a sort of sense of a wave, another wave, this business of attempting to escape, coming in waves rather than coming in sort of single generations.
Yes, in the beginning of this conversation with you, we talked about the voices. And I think in our voices, in my voice today, for sure, there are other memories that are living inside of me, literally. Maybe I am not totally aware of that, but the more I get, the more I am older, I am 47, the more I am surprised how much the stories of my mother and her parents are present in my daily life. So the character of Zahira, the Moroccan prostitute in this novel, her aunt was used by the French people when they were colonized in Morocco as a prostitute for the soldiers, for the French soldiers in Morocco, and then sent to Indochina, Vietnam today, to be the prostitutes, the sexual object, actually, for many, many men daily, for all these soldiers in war in Indochina. So I don't know how to tell you this. I am very happy with the link you made with your country, Ireland, because there is always this idea of disappearance. There is always this idea that at some point, someone made some sacrifice, did something that we don't know about, and suddenly, when we are older, we see the link between what that person did in the past and what is me. Like, for instance, my aunt, my personal aunt, the sister of my brother, my father, when they were living in the countryside in the 40s and the 50s, my father and his brother, they didn't have jobs in the countryside. So the sister, their sister, was the prostitute. She was a prostitute, and during many, many years, she gave them food. She put the food on the table. And sometimes I think if that woman didn't make some sacrifices for her father, for her brothers, I would not be here as a writer speaking and trying to be brilliant in front of you.
Abdellah, that was great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
And I think we can take questions, and we're going to hand back over to Sandrine, are we?
Yes. So there is one first question from David Baker. That is his question. I would like to know exactly what is the name of the neighborhood where Abdellah grew up, where he first heard these stories. Was it part of Saleh or in Rabat itself?
I am from Morocco. I was born in 1973 in Rabat. I live in France since 1999. The novel A Country for Dying is all set in Paris, in the French society today. And these are all immigrants living, surviving, and dreaming bigger than what France is allowing them to dream. It's totally about what is about the French society today and how France is treating the immigrants, but it is not written in a miserabilist way. It is a novel full of contradictions and full of energy of life. They are all alive. Yes, they are poor and desperate, and French don't recognize them, but they don't care and they keep living. I grew up in a family that was speaking totally in Arabic. The French language was not my first language. I studied it in the university. Voilà.
That leads us to the second question from Jean Wobleski. The young immigrants in the banlieue of Paris are politically ignored, treated as invisible strangers and have no social power, yet they continue to come to the city and they stay. Can you explain why?
They come to the city and?
And they stay.
They stay.
Yeah, they are staying. They are not living, they are staying in France.
Well, I think that's a post-colonial vengeance, because, you know, the French and the Europeans took so many things during the colonization. So I think these new generations of immigration, they just feel like they don't need any authorization. They just go to Paris and Europe, whether the power of Europe allows them to do that or not.
I think if I just, the idea of England without the nourishment that England has received from immigrants would be astonishing. For example, we cannot imagine England without Salman Rushdie, without Zadie Smith, without Monica Ali. And I'm just mentioning writers, I'm not talking about singers or painters, that just in the arts, but also now in politics, also in every area of English life, so that it isn't a question of staying. Why would people stay? It is a question almost as though some energy has come, and certainly in England, it has made all the difference to the country. And I presume that's the case with France. Is that the case with France, Abdellah?
I think there is less recognition of Arab writers or African writers than in England. There is still some battles to do here in France about that. but it's good that you gave names of artists. But me, I think just for the workers, the people from Mali and Senegal who are doing this bad jobs, the white French people don't want to do anymore. And yet they are doing that for France because they believe this is the place they want to stay. And maybe, and for sure they are mistreated, but yet this is their place. So just the idea to ask why are they staying is for me bizarre, because most of them, they were born here. Some of them, the ones who are living and put into this in the suburbs, they are French. Yes, they are not treated as French, but they were, most of them were born here in France. So the case, so I wonder, why are we asking the question, why are they staying? Where should they go? End of my answer.
Sandrine?
No more question left from the audience yet.
Oh, I think this question is also very important for what's happening here in the United States. James Baldwin has a very interesting essay just saying, you know, that the story, the American story, is ours. It's not yours, and it's not mine. It's ours, and that it's a shared story, and that until we accept how much it's shared, then no progress can be made. And he points out, for example, that who's there when you're dying? Usually one of us, meaning it's an African-American woman who's working late in the hospital at very low wages. She's the one who's there. Who's there when you're born? And he's saying, again, it's the same idea, that that actually what Abdel is talking about, the idea of who's in the nursing home at night? The Lithuanian woman, if you're talking about Ireland. You know, that the Poles and the Lithuanians came to Ireland. They haven't become writers yet. They are learning how to play Irish football and Irish games, the kids are. But the adults came and they worked in the hospitals and they worked in the nursing homes. And they did jobs that no one in Ireland was ready to do. But it is that we saw them. My first meeting with a Lithuanian in Ireland was in a nursing home when my aunt was in the nursing home. And I was there through the night. And there was only one woman there through the night. She was Lithuanian. So that slowly we got to know one another. And that's how, because she was taking a low-paid job. But it was a low-paid job that was really necessary. We really needed her. Her kindness was vital for us. And so that idea of Europe as a space now in which people move, I think the great thing that has happened, which is allowing freedom of movement, has actually meant that Europe is a very different and better place than it was. But I, as I said, I also think that, you know, for example, the city of London is a city where the simple business of people who learned to eat one another's food. You know, in other words, there's no such thing as English food. English food is over. No one wants roast beef and Yorkshire pudding and gravy. No one wants that anymore. That's over. People that England has gone, and so we live in a changed world. And I think this novel, A Country for Dying, is a book that registers very clearly the sort of dynamic that is at work in the European cities, which might seem to be at the edge of the city, but actually is providing a strange energy that is actually moving towards the center. And it's moving towards the center courtesy of narrative. In other words, that you need that the journalism can never cover that idea of the strange relationship between periphery and center, the strange relationship between outsider and insider. But the novel can do this by entering into the spirit, into the soul of a character, and by allowing voice to work, by allowing voice to matter. And I think that you can talk, Abdellah, all you like about stealing, about being a thief, but actually you're also being a ventriloquist, and you're also learning the thing that matters, which is that our ability to imagine others, everything depends on that.
Yes, absolutely.
So what the novelist does is merely a metaphor for what everyone in a certain place has to do, where in the night, the Lithuanian woman and myself have to start imagining each other. She has to start seeing what I'm going through, and I have to start seeing how tired she is. And that business of you imagining these women, for example, and finding a voice for them and letting each one speak, that actually matters. It isn't in other words, it isn't a form of entertainment.
No, it's even somehow, maybe the word duty is too big, but it's not the word duty, but I feel like I am responsible for that. Because here in France, or there are not that many Arab writers, and they don't, we are not expected to write about this, about these characters here. We are expected to write about other things, that to have books that will be bestsellers. Because you see, these characters are small for the French society. They are invisible. They are, but they are not to me. And earlier I was saying, I grew up with the idea that books were not intended to someone like me in Morocco. It was really the idea that this is for the bourgeois Moroccans who work with the Moroccan power and who know French language, and meaning they are much more important than us. Now that I am published here in France, that I know French language, I cannot betray these people. I think I just keep looking.
Okay, can I ask you just to give us something more? When you're talking about being a Muslim and the meaning of Islam, I wonder if you could connect that for me, or disconnect it, or just give me some idea of it. In the creation of Zaire, you are working with ideas of what's accepted to be good or bad. In other words, that, oh, she's a prostitute in Paris, she's getting older, she has to be A, sad, B, she has to be some way dishonest. And what you give her is a sort of strange glow, a strange, almost spiritual, well, not almost, a spiritual glow, which goes against what she does. And now there's one way in which this could be seen as almost a religious way of entering into her spirit, to say, I'm looking for the core, I'm looking for the center. I am actually going to study your soul. And what you're doing in the book is actually looking at soul in the case of Zaire. And I wonder if that I just wonder if you could just circle that for me for a moment and see where it would take you.
Well, it comes from Islam as a culture, as something like when you say, Colm, you are Irish. So there is some imaginaire, Irish imaginaire there in your head, whether you like something in Ireland or not. The idea is not to be okay with things in Islam or not. It's not to say Islam is not free or is not. That's another debate. For me, the real transgression is not just to play the hero. That's so easy today when you know the right words to say with the social media. The real heroism is somehow to find a strength and a way to make things changing while being surrounded by other people. And I think that's what she is trying to do. She knows that she is condemned as a prostitute, as a sexual object, by Islam, by her family, by Morocco. She knows all that. But me as a writer, I'm not going to put her in that little teeny tiny story. For me, that's teeny tiny. I want her to be, in spite of everything they say about her, to be, I don't know, in her light. In her light, it's in the light that she is bringing with her. I think I already told you this, Colm. When I was a student in Morocco, in Rabat and Salé, I used to go to take the bus from the city of Salé to go to Rabat every day. And at night, I would go to take the bus again from Rabat to Salé. So in the terminus, in the bus station of Rabat, there at around 6 p.m., 7 p.m., Well, all these people in Rabat had to go back to Saleh. In this terminal station, I witnessed so many Moroccan women, mothers actually, with their children, and searching for clients as prostitutes. And I witnessed that during 8 years, and I found that the most courageous thing to do, and the most maybe luminous thing. They were not sad people. Yes, they were living in a very difficult situations, but yet they found a way to make new links with the world. They were luminous. These women were luminous. Yes, they were experiencing something very hard, very harsh, but while doing those harsh things, sexual things, something extremely beautiful was coming out from them. We could say that they are like Mary Magdalene or something like that. There was some, and this is not something I am making up just to tell you. This is something that I used not to take my bus, just to sit next to them and pretend that I am not watching what they are doing. I just wanted to sit next to them. And I did that during many years when I was 18, 19, 20. So what I am doing today with the characters of Zahira and Aziz, who are immigrants in Paris, is actually just a reactualization, updating, if I might say, of something that is in me since I am a teenager. This idea to see the light, the real light, not the light I want the people to be in, like not me to impose to them the politically correct, media things that we are all hearing, and not to see them what their own light. And I think this is very important.
Abdellah, thank you very much. I will talk to you soon, and you've been marvelous. And Sandrine, I'm going to put back to you.
Thank you so much, Abdellah, and thank you so much, Colm. It was a wonderful conversation, as Andrea was writing to us a short minute ago. Again, it was a pleasure to host you both. It was great, and I wish you a wonderful evening, Abdellah, and a wonderful afternoon, Colm.
Thank you very much.
Good tennis session.
Okay, take care. Okay, bye.